SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Everybody loves an underdog, apart from FanDuel, it seems. When the authorities in Missouri announced 2 untethered sports betting licenses, it seemed like the result would be a non-event. Indeed, FanDuel and DraftKings did apply, but so did Circa Sports. And, in a shock move, the Missouri Gaming Commission shunned FanDuel and awarded one of the lucrative spots to the underdog, Circa. So why did the MGC of Missouri choose Circa over FanDuel, and what else has been going on in the US in the last week or so? We'll discuss this, Kalshi's latest moves, and the future of 1-800-GAMBLER in today's episode of iGaming Daily. iGaming Daily is brought to you by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. I'm Charlie Horner, and today I'm joined by SBC's media managing editor, Jessica Welman. Jess, how's things?
I like it over here. It's a lot less work. Not to say that you don't do work. I'm just saying, like, this is nice. You keep doing the intros, and I'll just hang out here now.
Indeed, the tables have turned. And look, let's dive into this one, because this was an interesting story, because we all assumed that it would just be FanDuel and DraftKings, right?
I mean, to the point where I remember Alex Kane of Sport Trade kind of pointing to this as an example of, like, cronyism, that, like, you very obviously wrote the bill so that these two people, or groups rather, get these 2 untethered licenses and screw the rest of you. And so, like, the fact that it didn't go to them really was quite the surprise.
Yeah, it felt like to have a soccer or a football reference, it really felt like a cup upset, like a small league club beating a Manchester United or a Liverpool. But so let's look at the decision then. So what happened, and I guess how is the decision made?
So it's this very kind of obscure criteria, which is par for the course sometimes in these. And each of them kind of presented to the Missouri Gaming Commission and said, here's what we can bring to the table. And some of the things they're supposed to consider, revenue for the state, how much you're going to give back to the state in other ways. I think we've talked about this on the pod ad nauseum, that it's more than just tax dollars. It's, are you creating jobs? Are you doing programs in the community? Are you helping Missouri in particular in a way that maybe, like, just money doesn't solve? And in the presentation, Derek Stevens of Circa, kind of just said, like, we're not for everybody. I'm not here for, the people that want to bet $5 a pop. I'm here for a higher bankrolled bettor who takes it more seriously, and that's who we are going to court. And I think, it's hard to read the minds of people in this. Revenue, obviously not the answer in terms of why Circa had the upper hand here, but perhaps in a moment where there's been discussions about over-marketing, oversaturating, a state sees that they're about to roll out, and they're like, here's somebody who is going to be a lot more measured in their approach, and maybe we should reward that.
Yeah, and maybe just before we go any further forward, we should just outline to the audience who may not know, what's the benefit of being untethered compared to being tethered to a partner?
Yeah, so first and foremost, FanDuel's coming to Missouri. Like, it's not so what was set aside in the bill that is now law is that 2 operators can obtain untethered licenses to operate purely online sports books for $500,000 compared to $250,000 for the tethered. This is where you math geniuses at home might be like, well, what's the point of that? The point of it is that with these partnerships, these market access deals, they can be structured different ways. It varies partnership to partnership, but you are going to be paying to that partner for giving you access to Missouri, and you're sharing in the amount of money that you make. So maybe somewhere in their head, somebody at Missouri who is very concerned that land-based groups get treated well in this are like, well, if somebody's going to partner with Circa, they're not going to make any money off of that. But if somebody partners with FanDuel, that's going to be lucrative. That's going to be money for either a team or a casino. In this instance, it is a team. It is not a casino. FanDuel, as you should in these circumstances, clearly had a backup plan, immediately announced that they're going to partner with the MLS team in the area, which is called St. Louis City SC. I never understand the initials at the end, I'm going to be honest.
Soccer club.
Okay. I was like, sporting club? I don't know. I mean, I'm just like, why is this in South Carolina? That doesn't make any sense. So, for FanDuel, it is going to, I mean, they'll be fine. They're going to make way more money than Circa ever makes in Missouri, but they are going to have a bit of a hit to their bottom line in paying for a market access agreement. To give you an idea, I don't think that this, for example, gives DraftKings some massive advantage in Missouri because they don't have to rev share when their chief competitor does. It's still going to be a very competitive landscape for the two of them. It's really kind of par for the course for FanDuel. They have this situation in most states. So really, Circa, the huge, huge winner here, because you're talking about a sports book that, while everybody else is getting on earnings calls talking about we're at 10% hold, 11% hold, we're forecasting 14% hold in 2 years. Stevens is just like, we're 3.5%. We're never going to be much higher than that. They're really at that margin that was much more common in Nevada before the repeal of PASPA. 3.5%, even low by that standard. Usually it's like 5-6%. So for them to eliminate the middleman is hugely beneficial. So, plaudits to MGC for giving a little guy an opportunity to succeed without some of the burdens that come with trying to enter a new market.
Yeah, we should mention for some of the European and international listeners that Circa is not a big operator targeting all those sort of recreational players, are they? They are more going for the sharper end of the market, aren't they?
Yeah, and I mean, this kind of I might be jumping ahead, but we'll talk in a minute about average bet size. FanDuel, DraftKings, you hear conjecture. I think in Illinois you have a better sense because they tell you the number of bets there are. FanDuel is like a $25 average bet, something like that. I've heard DraftKings and SGPs, which are more common, tend to be smaller because people are not going to go huge on the risk there. Circa's average bet is $50, which is, again, by the old guard standard, relatively normal, if not on the low side, because, I mean, when I lived in Las Vegas, I'm not going to go to a sports book to place a $5 bet. So I would place maybe 2 $100 bets a year as opposed to 40 $5 bets on my phone. So yeah, it's just it's kind of, Prime Sportsbooks has a similar MO. We don't want to limit people. We're really here for the sharp bettor. They have, I think they're in a handful of states at this point. I want to say 7, 8, something like that. And in some of them, like Illinois, and they just opened here in Kentucky, really nice sports books, similar to the one in Las Vegas, which again, for the international set, if you haven't seen, is gorgeous, gigantic old school board of screens, stadium style seating, really nice, and something you just don't see as much anymore. So they're kind of retro in that respect.
Mm-hmm. And talking about bet sizes, as Circa is obviously known for taking a different approach to others, but they've done something a little bit different. Do you want to explain what they're doing in Missouri? In Missouri?
This is in Illinois, you mean?
Oh, sorry, in Illinois. Forgive me.
No, it's a lot happening with Circa. I mean, I don't think we've ever talked about Circa this much in total than we have this week. Just days after getting selected and kind of saying, we're here to, give back to your community. And, I mean, I will say, reading the transcript, Stevens did kind of say, we're not here for just, the $2 bettor. He was very clear about that. But then they kind of turn around. And in Illinois, where a couple of books have tried they're going to do it as a fee, although that's a whole other podcast episode where we're not sure if that fee is taxable or not, but it sure seems like the IGB intends to tax it as of right now. And then the other books have kind of in response to this, you're going to be taxed per transaction, have said, well, we're going to up our minimum bet to $1. Circa's like, we're upping our minimum bet to $10, which I know doesn't sound like a lot. There's a mile of difference between someone whose standard bet size is $5 and someone whose standard bet size is $20. I'm a $5 bettor. If I really like something, I drop 2 units and I bet $10. So like it would just be a non-starter for me in Illinois to go to Circa because I don't want to have a minimum bet that big.
I think that's probably indicative of the sort of target demographic that they're going after in that sort of sharper end of the market. Just finally, before we go to a break, we've made a lot about the shunning of FanDuel for Circa, but perhaps more interestingly, DraftKings was selected for an untethered license over FanDuel, which is kind of weird.
That's the one not weird,
like, just intriguing.
Like, you ever have your friend like bring around a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you're just like, I mean, I don't get it, but okay, if it makes you happy. No, well, offense to DraftKings. DraftKings tends to be in the news more for marketing, overstepping with marketing, and that sort of thing. FanDuel generally considered to be out ahead of them in terms of just like metrics, although it's always shifting and relatively close. But yeah, I think there were a couple of just eyebrows raised on like, oh, DraftKings and not FanDuel, huh? Okay. Again, I was out and traveling while the petitions were being presented, and I'll be honest that I didn't get to see the full presentation. From what I've heard from Tom Nightingale, FanDuel maybe overemphasized revenue at the expense of giving back to the state. And that to him was kind of the key difference between the two. And I think is reflective of how you're going to have to approach state lawmakers in addition to regulators going forward is, here's what we're going to do for Missouri. Here's what we're going to do for California, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, as we say, it's not going to make a huge difference between the two's bottom lines, but I think DraftKings will take the small PR win where they can get them. Okay, Jess, let's take a quick break and we'll come back and round up some of the other biggest US gambling news stories.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
All right, welcome back to iGaming Daily. I'm joined by SBC's managing editor, Jessica Welman. Jess, it's been a couple of weeks since we've spoken about Kalshi, and I for one,
has it?
I'm getting withdrawals, so I think we need to revisit this one.
You listen to the Mark Dunbar pod, right? Because I will say, not because I was there, but like that was a really good listen. And one
really,
that
really
framed
good.
it a lot differently for me than I had realized. I mean, did I sob into a pillow for a couple hours knowing this was now going to be 2 years of my life? Yeah, I did. But it was very good. Right now, two sides of the coin. Let's start with the consumer facing stuff and then we'll do the legal lap. Consumer facing. Effective today, which is Tuesday when we're recording, on Kalshi, you can now have event contracts related to point totals, touchdown related contracts, and spread contracts, which prior to this, it was really just yes, no, who's going to win the game. And awards, they've done those kinds of things too. So they are expanding the catalog, and you're starting to see the trend that if they can phrase it as a question, which is kind of how you have to do it, it'll be like, to those of you not watching, like brackets event, happen with bracket event or person or team XYZ. I think as long as you can construct it as a question somehow, Kalshi's planning to roll it out eventually. So
if it's a question, it's not sports betting. I think that's the key distinction that we're making.
Well, it's a swap. It's an economic position, Charlie, because as we've talked to death, Kalshi will tell you that everything has economic consequences, which I mean is kind of true. I was thinking about this, reading up on the latest legal stuff, that to me, there is a world where there are say gaming wins this court battle. To me, there is still a world where some contracts that exist on Kalshi are also markets and sports books. Because, like, for those of you who don't watch the NFL, towards the end of the season, a lot of the narratives can become like, Travis Kelce's going to have a huge game because if he gets 2 touchdowns before the end of the season, he triggers XYZ bonus. And so, like, the economic impact of him catching touchdowns is actually, like, pretty material. So I'm curious, and I need to ask the lawyers at IMGL, those who attend in Lisbon, I need to ask them, just like, are there contracts that do make sense in both worlds, even if Kalshi loses?
Yeah, we've done our best to do that with the Venn diagrams and the overlapping circles that we did a few weeks ago. But it was great to have an actual lawyer on the show to clear some of those questions up. And I feel like we might be leaning on IMGL a little bit more often, particularly in Lisbon, to get some answers.
I told Andy, I was
questions.
like, can I just like go to IMGL for a day? And he was like, absolutely not. And it's true. You want to be at Lisbon, you want to be at our event, but like the co-locating of IMGL means a lot of really interesting people in this space are going to be there as well, and hopping back and forth between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do come to SBC Summit. There is a lot of court cases going on, as we've mentioned. Are there any more updates from these myriad of court cases that we've been discussing?
Okay, so we are now in, for those keeping track, New Jersey, Nevada, Maryland, California, the Third Circuit, the Fourth Circuit. The Third Circuit has a date of oral arguments of September 10th. While that is a date to have in the calendar and we'll get to hear the arguments, it's going to be months before they actually write a response to those arguments. Meanwhile, in Nevada, here's what's going on that is kind of interesting, and I will be writing it up today. So ideally, it'll be live now as you're listening to it in the future. In Nevada, there's debate on whether or not we need discovery. Charlie, have I talked about lawsuits enough that you know what discovery is?
Yes, but for the benefit of the listeners,
you'll play dumb for me. Discovery is the process where you get to kind of petition information from your opponent in the case. I need XYZ information in order to make my case, et cetera, et cetera. Kalshi has made a motion for summary judgment, which would speed this process up a lot, saying all you're doing is debating the letter of the law. You don't need to go through our files. You don't need to go through our tech. You don't need to go through our emails with the CFTC in order to make this decision. And they're trying to stay discovery, like put it off until they get a ruling on this summary judgment thing. Meanwhile, both the Nevada regulators and the Nevada Resorts Association, who is an associated person in this case, like they're attached to the plaintiff, they're just like, nah, man, you said we were going to do discovery. The judge already kind of listened and agreed discovery was probably necessary. We're moving forward and you need to chill and give us what you need to give us. And so that'll be an interesting one because every one of these cases is going to have discovery involved potentially. So seeing how one handles it and if the legal arguments one side is making hold weight with somebody is gonna, potentially domino affect the others. Kalshi, somewhat fairly making the point that why does the Nevada Resorts Association need to understand like how their tech works and if they're capable of geolocating?
Yeah, absolutely.
In order to make a legal argument about if this is legal or not. Still parsing through these documents, so I need to fully grasp and wrap my head around it. But it is kind of the latest big topic is how much under the hood are we going to get? Or is this just purely a semantic debate and there's no need to move any further in terms of looking around at what Kalshi is doing?
Well, listeners can keep up to date with all of this on SBC Americas, but rumbling under the surface is also we have the CFTC leadership, Brian Quintenz. Will he take up the reins at the CFTC. Obviously, we know he's a board member at Kalshi, or he was. I think he's agreed to step down if he is installed. But is there any update on this, or do we have to keep waiting?
So right now, there is not. Thank God. Finally, I get a break on something. One last thing on the discovery. Apparently, like, NRA kind of hinted, like, seems like this group is kind of bribing the CFTC right now. And in the response, Kalshi very snarkily was like, well, if you think that, you should be suing the CFTC. They're getting very contentious in their wording, which makes these more fun. Quintenz, right now, we are in the middle of a recess for Senate. So they will be out through Labor Day. Then they come back for like 3 weeks before they are out for a period again. So right now, nothing is happening. Behind the scenes, I'm sure stuff is happening. Dustin Gauker at Event Horizon Newsletter continues to have like the FOIA requests and is on top of it. Because I just do not have the energy to do this, I'm just going to point you to Dustin if you want to read all of those. It seems very up in the air, but we haven't heard news beyond the last time we've talked about it.
Great. Well, it's nice to know that we're not bombarded with so much news.
I get a break of something.
Yeah. Okay, Jess, briefly, because we are sort of running out of time, but we did do quite an impassioned episode of iGaming Daily a few weeks ago about the future of 1-800-GAMBLER, and I believe there's been an update on that one. So would you like to bring us up to speed on this?
Yes, because recall, our question was just like, what do you guys want? For those who missed the episode, the Council of Compulsive Gambling of New Jersey is actually the owner of 1-800-GAMBLER. They've owned it since like back in the 80s and 90s when Nevada and New Jersey were kind of the only gambling games in town. For the past 3 years, NCPG had been licensing that number to use it as a national level to just kind of get somebody on the phone and immediately get them to the state that they needed to get to in order to get help. They are currently still overseeing that. We have comment on SBC Americas from CCGNJ every time, Charlie. I can't remember this acronym.
It doesn't roll off the tongue.
That their intent and what they want is, we have never wanted to re-up the contract with them. We did not, agree to that. We don't want to go to arbitration because in our minds, the contract is over. We're doing what we can to keep it online because, like you guys, we think it needs to be online. However, we think we are a better group to run and manage this at the national level than NCPG is, and that's what we want to do going forward. So be sure to check that out. Tom Nightingale, very on top of it, and has like detailed statements from them about what their plans are. The bright side is it does sound like whatever happens, somebody who cares very deeply about making sure this hotline is available is going to be in charge of this hotline, which is the good news.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what everyone wants to hear. But if you want to know what happens next, please remember to visit SBC Americas, because Jess, Tom, and Justin will have all of the latest news, not just on that story, but from all of the news shaping the US sports betting and online casino industry. And you can keep up to date with all the global sports betting and online casino news by tuning into iGaming Daily every day. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.